É você que vai fazer a oração também? Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Very good. Today is a beautiful day. Autumn's still here, but the winter is just trying to pick and say, hey, I'm here. So we had some places in Toronto that we got some snow yesterday. Nothing in Oakville, thank God. Just a fine rain. Well, welcome to November. This month we start the every Sunday we're gonna have the lecture based on this book, The Divine Justice, from Chico Xavier and Emmanuel. So today Jo is going to be giving us his lecture, which is called Divine Justice and Spiritism. So I believe it's going to be an overall view of the book and things to come. And I hope you enjoy it. So we're gonna have our reading from Marcos de Clay, and he'll be doing the prayer too.
Good morning, everyone. The reading is from the book Happy Life from Divaldo Franco and the Spirit Joanna de Angelis. You are not a distant observer of life. You are a member of the universal organism, invested with tasks and responsibilities. Carrying them out will lead to many successes for you. The position of a detached observer leads to erroneous viewpoints and conclusions. On the other hand, conscious participation gives the correct measure and provides a better understanding of the data at hand. Consider yourself a valuable person in the web of the creation, who is becoming more and more active in the Father's work and making it better known and respected. You are God's heir, and the universe, in a way, belongs to you. So I would like to invite everyone for the initial prayer. So let us all close our eyes and together imagine that we are in a beautiful field, in a park with flowers and green grass, and the marvelous sun warming up our faces. And on top of the hill, let us imagine that from that sun comes the divine presence of our beloved Master Jesus Christ, the governor of our planet, and the one who gave all his sacrifice to exemplify what love means to every single one of us, to exemplify the path to happiness that we will achieve one day. We thank you, Master, for this blessed day, for all the assistance we receive from your workers, for the spiritual workers who are here present among us, for our guardian angels and protector spirits who are with us every single day and in this very moment. Help us, Lord, in these brief moments to have open hearts and minds so that we may absorb the lessons that we are going to receive. May we leave this meeting with more strength and encouragement to practice your teachings, to strive to be humble and to be the servant and not expect to be served. May during this meeting we acquire more encouragement, and we also ask the blessings and the inspiration to our dear brother Jo Mussi, responsible for the study this morning. And we ask the same blessings to all our children who in this very moment are receiving the seeds of the eternal message of love you left to us. And finally, may you please bless our brothers and sisters who are also watching us through the internet. Thank you, and so be it. Senhor Mussi, por favor.
Okay, so it's my turn to say good morning to everyone.
Good morning.
You know, I was looking back and trying to find out when was the last time I gave a lecture here, and it's been 5 months. And I said, wow, we've had some incredible lecturers come up here, and I'm so proud of every single one of them who go through the effort, go through the preparation. And as a lecturer, I can tell you that that is the best part of doing this job, because we learn so much as we get ready for our 1 hour that we have here. We have to spend a lot of time thinking what is so useful and important that I have to say now that you would come here and have to listen to me. One of the very interesting things that I found this last week when I was preparing was this quote for Blaise Pascal. So, as Sandra said, the theme of the month is divine justice. So what is divine justice? So we're going to go a little bit into that discussion and see if you guys agree with me. But the Blaise Pascal, who became a very important spirit in a number of the books that Kardec wrote. He wrote this while he was still incarnated, before he was really helping Spiritism, but even though, as you will see, he was already doing so even while he was here alive. And in his position was, this is a short text, and he's trying to rationalize, should he believe in God or not believe in God? What are the arguments, pros and cons, coming out of the book called Pensées, Thoughts, that he was having. So he struggled with this, as we all do. So in this section, he's talking about the infinite. And this quote came, just jumped out at me. And he read, "The finite is annihilated in the presence of the infinite and becomes pure nothing. So our spirit before God, so our justice before divine justice." So as a scientist, understanding or trying to visualize what infinite means, he realizes that if there is a God, God is the infinite. And who are we? We're so petty small. We're just a finite breath in this immense, infinite universe or existence that exists. That is God. So the same is true about our justice. We think we have evolved, and I'll talk about that as well, that we are just, that we know what justice is. But he brings us back the point that no matter how evolved our justice of the human person is, it is as if comparing the finite to the infinite, if we compare our justice to the divine justice. That's how far we're still away from being able to grasp the whole implication of divine justice. Lawyers, 4 years in university, then a lifetime understanding our justice system, with all of its good things and its fault. 4 years, the very beginning. So we'll be here for 4 million years trying to understand the divine justice. But just because we're that far away from fully understanding it, it doesn't mean that we have not been given the initial thoughts, the principles that guide the justice of God. So let's walk through, and hopefully you will have things to share, and of course, oh yeah. So let's look at, I always try to do this, to look at the words, and let's try to understand what they mean. So let's start with the word justice. We all have very likely many different ideas. What do we mean about justice? So this is the Wikipedia, the more common sources for a lot of us when we're trying to learn something or to get learned. Doesn't mean it's correct, but it's usually a good starting point. And it says it's, in its broadest context, includes both the attainment of that which is just and the philosophical discussion of that which is just. So it's not just understanding justice from the punishment and reward point of view, but also understanding in the first place who defines what is just. He goes on to say that the concept of justice is based on numerous fields and many different viewpoints and perspectives, including the concepts of moral righteousness based on ethics, rationality, law, religion, equity, and fairness. Often, the general discussion of justice is divided into the realm of social justice and procedural justice. So one is the concept of what justice means, or what should be, or what should be just for all of us. And the other one is how do you achieve that through a judicial system. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward, right? I mean, I don't know what you have in your mind, but somewhere should fit into those notions. Some people will think of justice immediately as putting people in jail from the punishment side. Others will be thinking of social justice, right? The global perspective of what that means. Others might be, being fair. The word fairness comes often to mind when we say justice. But the reality is, especially our justice of the humanity, has changed quite a bit. Initially, it was brought on as a need to organize community living. So before we were small tribes, and then we started to grow into small communities. And the more we came together, the more we realized that if we weren't going to kill each other every week, that there's going to be some kind of basic rules that was going to guide us. And we can trace this back all the way to Old Babylon, where the first laws were created. And the sense was that we felt the need to come together, but we didn't know exactly how to behave together. So those are the very first seeds of what we might describe as a judicial system. And as we said, if you talk about justice, you have to start defining what is correct, what is just. And that's exactly what we started to do. Now, at the time, we probably realized that some of the punishments were very harsh by today's standards, right? But it seemed, or the best we can assume, that it was what it was appropriate at the time and the best that they could do. If you're going to evolve anything, you will start with very imperfect models, imperfect versions, and you let evolution takes its place, and it gets better every time. So this was created out of necessity. But unfortunately, one of the side effects of us coming together is that one group of people would often fight other group of people for the resources, whether it was land, food, water, animals, whatever. And we created a bellic society, which came together or was often led by the strongest or the leaders who take upon themselves that once they were victorious to start defining what was correct now for the people they've conquered. And that was the seed of tyranny. And justice was their mechanism to put fear on the people that they conquered. And unfortunately, it also bled over to the people that helped them conquer. the very people who were involved in all of this were suddenly now under the same laws and rules that these tyrants would create, often more in their self-interest than in the interest of the community. They wanted, above all, to protect that which they have conquered. We take that to the next level as we start to see the birth of some concepts around democracy, around greater participation. Now, obviously in the early days, this was not necessarily the democracy we see today with everyone participating. Before was an elite, a group of intellectuals maybe who did this. Remember, democracy is born out of Greece, and at the time only very wealthy men would have that power. But it was a first step towards reducing the power of the leader, right, the tyrant. And the idea of protection of property and body. So suddenly justice was protecting my land, protecting my house, my coins, my wealth, protecting my body against harm. So we see an evolution now that even though it's not perfect, we are now considering a greater part of the population as we start to introduce some of those. But they're very still materialistic in mind. They're protecting not the soul or the spirit or the morals of the society, but the goods and assets that we have created. Somewhere along the line, we became a much more religious society, and then suddenly we were using laws to govern moral behavior. So not only this says that you shan't steal, you shan't kill anybody or harm or invade lands, it's saying you shall not do this. You shall not have this type of behavior. And at this point, actually, even in the tyranny, at one point between those, the second and the fourth bullet, the notion of God kicked in. That a lot of these rules were not for man's purpose, but were given to us by God. And that God was the punisher, because it was his laws that we were breaking. In hindsight, we can see that that's very far from the truth. It was still a different type of tyranny that was being born, of the religious conformism. You have to conform to religious practices. And many countries, even today, still maintain this notion of religious law as being the essence of their society. Much more recently, we start to see the notion of justice as a representation or a proxy for the voice of minorities. Democracy was a good step forward, but early democracy basically became a monopoly of the majority. Whatever the majority wanted, that was it. Every other minority or everybody who disagreed was out of luck, because the majority could decide whatever they want, and they had this notion that since it is the majority that wants it, it must be correct. But in fact, it often wasn't. It was simply maintaining the interest of the majority. The notion of the interest of everyone, including the minority, starts to become stronger within societies. Now, there's also kind of the bad side that suddenly, in some places, you become kind of a prisoner of the minorities because they become as important as the majority. So we haven't figured out what that balance is. And again, all of this, I'm telling you, is not about divine justice yet. This is human justice. But we have to put this in context because, like everything else that we do in regards to God, it is so much influence about how we live. It's our life, our experience shapes, and we try to extrapolate that to how we believe God behaves. So finally, it's very common now that the notion of justice is as an advocate for social change. So We decide what is socially correct, and we look at justice only from the prism that whether those social changes or social rights were being taking place. In fact, you take a look at some of the word clouds that I searched in the web this week around justice. There is the criminal justice, so that's the focus around policing, getting people in jail, punishing them. But a lot of it is around social justice, about rights and freedoms, right? So we know that this is what we faced often. We're criticized, or we become judge of facts or things that happen, and we're saying this is not correct because this is not a social just thing to do. But can we define what social justice is? Often, as I said, is rights and freedom. So much in today's view, justice has morphed into the notion of guarantee of rights and freedoms. But I will put forth a different thought. Justice is not about our rights. Justice should be about our obligations. Because when we focus around rights, we're putting this in somebody else's turf. Right? I must have this because it is my right that was given to me. Well, did I do anything to deserve that? I'm not talking about deserving from a material perspective. From a justice perspective, have I done something to deserve this? How do I deserve anything in our lives? It's about our behavior, of who we are. So every justice system, every system of weights that we're going to have should not be about rights, focus. It should be around our obligations, who then gives us our rights. We often would like this world to be better, right? We see social injustice. We see a lot of wrong things happening. We recently have election in Brazil. Half of the country thinks that there's been an injustice. Half of the country thinks that the justice is correct in terms of the outcomes. But at the end of the day, we all, in our heart, want to see what we would kind of describe as a perfect world. And in this perfect world, everybody would be equal and obey the law. In a perfect world, people would be judged based on the truth, not on lies, not on false testimony. In this perfect world, those who infract or go against the law will be harshly punished according to their faults. So the harsher what they do, the graver it is their fault, the harsher is going to be the punishment. Some people still support the idea of capital punishment as the ultimate, final, most harshest punishment we could have in our society, being the death penalty. And those who observe those, finally, should be rewarded. If I'm doing my sacrifice and if I'm obeying the laws, I need to be rewarded for that. That is my scale, right? We often talk about justice as being a scale. Those who do things wrong should be punished. Those who do things right should be rewarded. Otherwise, what is the point of doing anything if that is not what we're going to have? And we hope that one day, we're going to reach that perfect world. But the problem is that we're thinking of this according to our human laws. And the problem with that is that God does not work that way. And this is a painting that I found as well. It's by a French painter called Pierre-Paul Proudhon. And it talks about justice and divine vengeance pursuing crime. So we have here a man that seems to have killed a woman. And to him comes two angels. One representing divine justice, and then the notion of divine vengeance. We feel that some crimes that we believe have happened cannot be harshly punished just by man alone. Often we think, that person, he got away easy. But God will punish him once he dies. He will see how badly he was or she was. His or her punishment is going to be awful. And I'm happy for that. Well, the problem that we face is that we want a perfect world, but our laws are not perfect. Our judges are not perfect. And in fact, a phenomenon that has happened recently, it always had existed, but it's gone to a completely new scale, is that we all have become judges, full-time judges. We're exposed to so much information, social media, newscasts, newspapers, all kinds of information. And we're judging people who live halfway across the world, and we're saying that person is right, that person is wrong, they should be punished, they should kill that person, they should arrest that person. And here we are trying to do this without understanding anything about what had happened. We receive but a fine sliver of facts or lies that come to us, and we're quick to make judgments. Yesterday, Sandra and I went to see a movie called Gone Girl. And besides the thriller aspect of the movie, there is a very evident critique of how what we call social behavior is being practiced today. How we see these personalities, often positive or negative, people who are accused of crimes, and how long does it take for you to make a judgment on that person? Often by looking at one tweet from Twitter, one web page that you look, or one post on Facebook, and you immediately now have said, I agree, that person is guilty. But who are we to be judges? If we can't even judge ourselves, who has given us the right to be judging others? Jesus says to Caesar that what is of Caesar, which means we have our laws, we have our human practice, and we have to behave and obey that practice. If anything, we need to have faith in justice, in the judicial system. And I know that that can be often very difficult to do. But we have become judges, and we don't know the truth. In fact, in many cases, the truth, the real truth, may never be known. It's difficult to be a real judge, not us, but a judge in our judicial system, because he or she must make some very difficult decisions based on the evidence that is presented to them. Evidence does not mean truth. And they have to understand and weigh what they have heard and do their best to make a decision. And it's a job that by definition they will make lots of mistakes, because they don't have a perfect set of laws. They are not perfect themselves. They have their bias. They have their ideas of how things should be. And ultimately, they don't know the truth. So what happens? What is the outcome of all of this? Well, the outcome is that others are not punished the way they should be. We often see people who go to jail and then they're off, house arrest now after 6 months. Is that justice? Is that fair? We cry against it. We get angry about it. On the other hand, we are not rewarded according to our wishes. So we do everything right? We don't make mistakes. And while these guys are getting away easy, we suffer. We don't have enough money for the things we want. They're stealing my money, and they keep going on. But notice how I wrote this phrase. I wrote it in a way that they are not being punished, and I'm not being rewarded. How many of us say, you know what? I get away with a lot of things that people don't know I did. They were wrong. Thank God they didn't catch me. Right? You're not asking yourself to be punished. Now, we sometimes get in a position that our guilt is so strong that our inner spirit is going to claim for that. But in the most of the times, even especially the little things we do wrong, which we then learn they're not so little, we don't ask to be punished for that or to be caught. We're happy that those mistakes, those faults, were not seen by everyone else. But we're so quick to want others to be punished for the things we do see. The reality is that we were created equal, right? So the first bullet on the other slide was we want everyone to be equal. We were created equal by God. We know that. Simple and ignorant. But the reality is we are not equal right now. We're all at different stages of our evolution. So to have a view of justice based on the premises that we're all equal, it's going to give you the wrong result. It doesn't mean that one is better than the other. It's not a judgment of the quality, of the value of the person, but it's a recognition that we're all different. That we all carry our own past from multiple lives. That we're all in a path of evolution. But we have reached different stages. And there's different obligations for the spirits that have reached higher levels of evolution. The more you know does not mean the more you have evolved and you know more, it doesn't mean that now you can get away with little things because you've done so much good in the past that you can get little passes on your mistakes. It's exactly the opposite. From now on, the more we evolve, the more critical we have to be, especially of the little things. Because very likely we won't be doing a lot of big mistakes, but it's the little mistakes that keep building up in our spirit. And if we don't practice the ability to be judges of ourselves, we can never be judges of others. Spiritism tells us around the notion of planetary evolution. We're moving into a world of regeneration. But farther ahead, even before, I didn't even try to get to the perfect world. I went one step down, called the happy world. So those who have listened to Givaldo or read some of his books knows the notion that there is this kind of next to last step called the happy world. So look at the difference between happy world and what we may be thinking of a perfect world. So in a happy world, there's only the truth. There are no lies because we're all kind of transparent. We can't hide anything. It doesn't mean that we're perfect, just that we can't hide anything. The divine laws are the only laws. So human laws will have disappeared by then. And we'll be left with the divine laws that have already been given to us. In fact, the divine laws have been planted or implanted in our spirits in the moment of its creation. All the spirits in a happy world follow the laws. Why? Because they're afraid of being punished? No. Because they know, they have learned, and they have incorporated in everything they do that it's through these laws that we achieve happiness. So we can do a whole lecture on what is happiness and what we're trying to achieve with happiness. But at this point, just understand that if you want to be happy, just follow the divine laws. if nobody is making mistakes or breaking the laws, there is no need for judges. And again, why are there no judges? Is it because nobody does anything wrong in a happy world? No. Because it's not a perfect world yet. So I'm assuming that there are mistakes that are made. But at this stage, who is the judge? Each spirit is a judge of themselves. And I can, without knowing it, but I can very much expect that no other judge would be as harsh as themselves on the mistakes that they made. That is why they continue to evolve. We can also say that even in a happy world, but everywhere else, in some ways, from a divine perspective, we don't need judges. Because the law of cause and effect will provide the right compensation. Either what we think as being as a reward, or what we think is a punishment. But as Pascal said, Blaise Pascal, we are so far from understanding that equation of the divine law, the divine justice, that we will be surprised what are the true rewards and what are the true punishments. So for example, we do everything right. So what is our reward? We get a whole bunch of more work to do. It sounds kind of opposite of what we want. We want to have vacations if we do a lot of good work, right? We want to have material things. If I do everything wrong, what could be my reward? I may be reincarnated as one of the richest men in the world, the women in the world. You think, what? How can that be? But let's not fool ourselves that we can even have a tiny understanding of the real purpose of these trials and these consequences. But we do have faith that we will receive what is just for what we do, positive or negative. That is a definition of divine justice. So that brings me back to the theme of the month, right? Divine justice for centuries has been focused around the notion of a punishing judge, divine judge, which is God. Maybe because, or maybe not maybe, but for sure because of the level of evolution where most people are, they needed to hear that black and white definition of justice. And the notion of heaven and hell, or other names but similar concepts, have permeated almost every religion that we have developed through our civilization. Knowing this, Allan Kardec, as his fourth book, created or wrote with the spirits the book Heaven and Hell. Right? And most people probably know, because I say this all the time, but every one of the books of Kardec, even though they have a title, they have a description of what the book is about, right on the front, on the cover. Right? And in this case, it says, the first part, describing what this book is, it describes it as a comparative examination of the doctrines. So it's not just about Spiritism, but all of the doctrines or other religions concerning the passage from corporeal life to spirit life, concerning future punishment and reward, concerning angels and demons, concerning suffering. More often than not, and that's kind of an irony, religions talk a lot about the punishment. They're very short on the rewards, if you think about it. It says, it's going to be a great place, don't worry about it, you're going to be great, and everybody's going to love you. And that's what we know about heaven. Right? You're going to have angels or clouds, or depending on the religion, you might have women with you if you're a man. So all of this, it's very, very high level, I would say, very simplistic. But the description of hell, oh man, that was in details. The pain, the suffering, the eternity of it. Right? So, heaven and hell, even though it's supposed to be balanced, was heaven and hell. And that's why we need to listen, because we wanted to put fear on people of the punishment. And maybe it was a representation of that people needed to be afraid, because that's the only way they would change. But we're past that, and hopefully we're moving past that, and that's why this world is becoming one of regeneration. Because we can't be just thinking of punishment. This book is divided into two parts. The first part really talks about heaven and hell. The second part talks about some stories, some testimony from spirits that have moved on, and they tell us what it is on the other side. Just a reminder for everyone. So this is the fourth book. The first three were Spirit's book, Medium's book, and the Gospel. Notice that the first one was 1957. It took 4 years for Kardec to write the Medium's book, 3 years for the Gospel, and then just 1 year for Heaven and Hell. That's because a lot of the material that he needed had been already collected through all of these stages. So he was just focusing specific messages as he wrote these new books. Heaven and hell, black and white, right? So we have hell below, fire, eternal pain, devils pinching us or hurting us. In heaven, it's a beautiful forest, no snow. Right? Because you would think that the opposite of hot is cold, but it's not. It's temperate. That's the opposite of hot. And that is how we have, for many centuries, been taught that is the divine justice. Either you go up or you go down. So Kardec wrote the book, and unfortunately this Heaven and Hell is one of the least appreciated books from Kardec. We are doing a study every Thursday at 7:45, and it's been great. It's been really useful, and it is an excellent book to read and to study. You need to go through the first parts, and then it really grows on you. So I invite all to join us on Thursdays. But, Kardec's book were written 2 centuries ago, or close to 160 years ago, 150. And thanks to the work of the spiritual community through the great medium Chico Xavier, Emmanuel, which was his mentor, decided to put Chico through a tremendous reward. You're going to work for 4 years writing 4 books. And these 4 books are the series that we've been focusing over the last few months, and ends with this one, which is the 4th. It was 4 books that explained in new terms. These were all written like 58, 59, 60, 61. Right? And the proposal from Emmanuel to Chico says, you're going to write these 4 books, and it's going to take you a year of messages to build these books, each one of them. Right? Great. Unfortunately, not translated to English yet, but hopefully they will be soon. So this month, we've come to number 4. The first 3 were the Religion of the Spirits, which explained the Spirits book. The Fields of the Mediums, the Mediums book. And the Spirit of Truth, which was the Gospel. The last one is Divine Justice. 82 chapters. They're short chapters, as often they are. Each one the result of one mediumistic communication in one particular session that Chico would do. So over almost a whole year, he had 82 sessions that were very carefully documented, and these built the 82 chapters. And this is what we're going to be talking about this month. Unfortunately, we can't go through the 82 chapters in a month, but my colleagues will be trying to do their best to cover as many of them as possible. And I thought it would be useful to pick one of them, right? So this is Spiritism Explains. This was psychographed in 03 February 3rd, 1961. So that's the title of each of the 82 chapters or sections have a little title. This is Spiritism Explains. And why I picked this one? Because I liked it. and I think it's a good kickoff for the month we have ahead. Because it's not directly, none of these chapters are directly about divine justice, but all the little pieces, all the little lessons, little tools that we have that have been given to us to help us explain that. And one of those tools is Spiritism. So it's always, the 5 slides, and each one is about what people want and what Spiritism provides, which I think it's very helpful for us to remember why we came to Spiritism, for those who weren't born in a Spiritist home, and why we should expect others to come to us, and what we can tell them and help them understand what they will find here in Spiritism when they do come. So the first one is, you queried about the great hereafter. What happens after we died? The Spirit's doctrine calmed your anxieties, explaining that you find yourself temporarily in this world and at the service of your own improvement towards the victorious mortality. So it tells us that the reason that we will find the hereafter and what will occur after that is all about our own improvement, our immortality, the evolution of the spirit, and that we shouldn't be anxious about it. We should actually be very happy and blessed to have these opportunities. You asked about the bitter disagreements between body and soul when sickness or mutilation appears. Why do I have a sick child? Why am I sick? Why do I have these problems? The Spiritist doctrines mellowed your distressed inner self, explaining that the eternal individuality, which is our spirit, temporarily uses an imperfect body as someone who uses a specific instrument for a particular task to correct oneself. So no tool that we use for anything can be perfect for everything. In fact, it's actually imperfect for for everything. It is well suited for a particular task. It's not about our body here, but it's about this life that we have in this body. It is not a perfect life, and it's not a perfect body, but is what is an instrument that we need to fix something in our own self. You inquired with respect to the purpose of domestic problems. Now, here nobody has problems within their family, of course. The reality is that the heart of what should be our greatest anchor, our greatest support, is also the fountain of many of our problems. Why is that? Why would the spirits and God create families to give us so much headache? The Spiritist doctrines harmonize your thoughts, explaining that the home is an institute for regeneration and love. When you return to the coexistence with friends and foes of past lives in order to build a better future. So it's not by accident that you have the relatives that you have. Or, let's think about it, that they have you as a relative as well. Right? But there is a purpose. Right? And the purpose is to build a better future. Not in this life. It's going to be tough. Especially if we carry so many prior problems and debts that we have to one another. If something has been done to us, we come wanting revenge or compensation. If you were the one at fault, either you do not want to recognize your faults, or you're not prepared to pay the price that the other one is demanding for your faults. You interrogate in regards to loved ones beyond the grave. And that's probably the hardest experience that we live, is when we lose somebody that we love and they die. And we think they're gone. And we don't know what they are. So the Spiritist doctrines cleared up your doubts, explaining that the grave is not the end, just as the cradle is not the beginning. In that every creature, once released of its physical ties, continues the march of improvement and ascension from the point where it found itself on earth. It's a trampoline. We move on, but we keep moving on. We will come back. Coming back is a good thing, because the alternative is not as nice. To not come back to earth, because we'll be coming back to some other place. Finally, you canvass the religious field about divine justice, which is the theme of what we're doing here today. The Spiritist doctrines suppress your unease, explaining that God does not grant privileges, and that in any part of the universe the soul receives irrefutably from life the goodness and or wrong that it gives itself. So we should not be concerned or surprised with the divine justice, because it will always be fair, and it will always be based on our merits and our faults. So if that's the case, it is a great call for us to improve ourselves, to have more merits than faults. And then we'll be able to fully experience the goodness and the holiness of the divine justice. So it is the theme of the month. We have 4 more lectures coming up. I do encourage you all to participate every week. It is a great theme. I mean, we could be talking literally here for months and months about this. But we only have 1 month. Luckily, this is a month with 5 weekends, so we get to hear 5 lectures, not 4. Next week, we have Lei do Mérito in Portuguese by our sister Joyce. November 16th is the Spiritist Work by our brother Márcio. We have Lunch and Learn, to each according to their deeds. Tiago is going to be between us and the food.
Lunch and Learn on November 16th. This is the first lecture, third lecture.
Oh, so sorry about that. So Márcio gets to be between us and lunch, and not Tiago.
I bring the dessert.
Yes.
You come.
And finally, Catarina closes the month with our own heaven and hell. Thank you. So we do have time for questions and comments. Nothing? 0? Thank you very much. Let's call the kids in, and we'll have then our passes. Thank you very much.